What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Today I want to share with you some practical tips on how to find more joy in your photography practice. So step one is to delete your Instagram account. I think there's like a little settings button. When you click on the settings button, just find the words that say like delete or disable account and just delete your account. If you have family and friends that follow you and you want to remain in touch with the people that are on your Instagram, just send them a kind message if you really care to. Ask them to text you or call you or FaceTime and remain in a relationship with these people that way. And so once you move beyond the Instagram trap of sharing photos, getting likes, comments, and feedback, now we want to build our own space where we can publish our photographs. And so the first step is to log into bluehost.com, purchase a domain with your first and last name, and then start building your website using wordpress.org. And so don't use Squarespace or these like cookie cutter website templates that people on YouTube are telling you to use. But if you follow my simple guidance here, you'll start to find that you can infinitely tinker and play with the website that you make, which will then provide you with more joy in your photography firstly. And it's hilarious that this is the first thing I have to describe on how to find more joy in your photography, but I believe this is the first most practical step that I can possibly give you. And so now that you have your own space, you have no noise with likes and comments and all these different superfluous things, you can start focusing on actually making. And so what I enjoy about making photographs is the fact that I'm simply treating it as a way for me to authentically express my internal state. And I do this by practically always carrying the camera with me with the Ricoh GR, pointing and shooting with automatic mode, treating photography as a visual diary. And so I simply make photographs throughout my day in the spirit of play, and I'm not worried about whether or not the photographs I make are good or bad or will receive validation or praise. And so in that sort of act of photographing daily, treating it as a visual diary, always having the camera with me, I'm essentially always photographing. And when you're in the flow state of always photographing and making new work and making pictures each day, I believe this is where you start to cultivate your instinct. And so over time, through consistency compounding, cultivating your instinct where you are no longer thinking and you're simply doing and shooting and moving each day, photography becomes inevitable in your life and effortless, and you'll start to enter the flow state. And so the flow state is, I believe, the peak human experience that anybody can achieve. And so as artists, photographers, working in the streets, walking, observing, and photographing, we wield this superpower of noticing and feeling deeply. And through photography, we can achieve joy in our everyday life and experience, no matter how mundane things may seem, no matter where we may be, through the act of creating. And so when you're creating and you're photographing and you're moving and your hormones are firing and you're in this sort of instinctual response of clicking the shutter, you'll start to feel good. You'll start to forget about the past and the future and simply remain in the moment where the sights, the sounds, the smells of the street invigorate you and carry you through the day as you're practicing. And you'll find that when you're in this state, you exist outside the passage of time and all of your worries kind of just fade away. And so, yeah, these are the practical tips I have initially when it comes to finding more joy in your photography. And then as you start to practice this way and you start to make each and every day, I believe then you'll start to improve your photography, because now with the removal of distractions and you're simply laser focused on the practice, you're going to become more consistent, and consistency will lead to more improvement in your results and output. However, in order to achieve that kind of output that you seek, you actually have to reorient the way that you embrace the medium each day. And so when you're out there and you're photographing, don't go out there hunting and looking and hoping to find anything. And when you're detached from that idea that you're going to make a great photograph, a lot of the times you'll wind up making a great photograph, because you never really know when something's going to arrive. And so, yeah, the goal is to essentially allow life to flow directly to you, and then you're just there responding to life. And so I'm trying to make photography as frictionless and easy for me to continue practicing with longevity. I essentially never want to burn out from photography. And so the most simple ways that I'm achieving this goal is actually on a very technical, practical level. And so with my compact Ricoh GR, I never have an excuse to not make photographs because it can always be with me in my front right pocket. And then when I'm using the camera with program mode or automatic settings, I then have a frictionless way of engaging with the medium. Lastly, when I make the picture, I'm having everything baked into the camera with a small high contrast JPEG file, so there is no post-processing. And then when it comes to culling through the work, I simply use the iPad Pro's Photos app, which is built into the device and doesn't require Lightroom and processing and all these sort of superfluous things. And so because the practice is frictionless and easy, and when I come home and cull through the photographs, I can stay on top of the discipline of shooting each day much more seamlessly. I then return to creating each day. I then wake up in the morning from this enthusiastic state to just continue practicing my photography. And so the aim and the outcome that we seek is actually within curiosity. And so photograph for that sake alone, for you to chip away at the day, posing questions about life. And so when I'm photographing, the way that I think about things is ultimately, when I'm making a picture of something, it's the camera that's interpreting reality, and it's the surprise that arises in the frames through the serendipity and the mistakes that keeps me curious and eager to go out there and photograph again. And so when you go home and you review your photographs using this streamlined approach, you'll start to become curious to simply see, what the fuck did the camera see? And that is a simple idea, but that's what's carrying me and propelling me to continue practicing despite my location, despite how mundane everything around you may seam. There's always something with the way that light is rendered upon your camera sensor, and that sort of natural abstraction that black and white photography, specifically a high contrast sort of JPEG workflow provides me. It's unlike anything. And because of that fact, because I'm becoming more curious, then I'm waking up enthusiastic. And I believe that when you think about these words, it's interesting, right? Curiosity, cure, to care. Like, what do you care about, right? Like, what is it that's, you know, calling you? And you'll start to discover that, you know, you'll start to discover ultimately what you care about through photography, through chipping away each day, through making pictures, and through following your courage, core meaning heart. You know, we wear our heart on our sleeves when we make photographs. You know, it requires a little bit of audacity to go out in the world with your camera and to photograph things. You know, it requires you to be an embodied reality, you know, taking risks, trying new things. Right, and so then when it comes to going through the work and putting it together, the final piece to this puzzle is making something tangible and physical, which you can now easily do with this streamlined approach to practicing daily, using print-on-demand services, specifically like Blurb, that allow you to design, print, and ship a photo book in rapid speed. It is extremely simple to work this way, where you're treating photography as a visual diary of your day. You're coming home, you're culling through the photos, you're increasing your curiosity, you're finding more success because you're more consistent. The work you're making becomes mysterious and interesting and ambiguous due to the abstraction. And then finally, when you make something and you put it together and you sequence a couple of photos in a book, you'll start to discover what you care about. You'll start to create your own world from that inner sort of curiosity that's guiding you to practice your photography. And so reorient the way that you're thinking about the medium and start to embrace play and start to treat photography this way, because then when you wake up with enthusiasm for the day, everything falls into place, and it's inevitable that you'll practice your photography. And so if you would like to take this challenge of treating photography as a visual diary, click the top link in the description of this YouTube video. I will send you the challenge where for 7 days you'll make a photograph each day, and then at the end sequence the photographs you make, send them directly to me. I will then look at the work and invite you to my private Flux Discord community where we can talk about photography, share work, get feedback, and chat. So yeah, love to have you. Hopefully some of these ideas inspire you to find more joy in your photography and join me in this practice of treating photography as a visual diary. And so yeah, that's all, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.